and welcome to another episode of the Geelong Region Soccer Show podcast. My name is Tonchi Prusak. I'm your host for this week's episode, and unfortunately, I'm away at the moment. So this week's episode and next week's episode, they have been pre-recorded. So it is still going to be a great show. Stay with us over the next half an hour or so. Tonight, we've got a very, very special interview. Now, I'm coming to you from Myers Reserve, home of Geelong Rangers Football Club. And a little bit later on in the program, I caught up with the chair of Football Victoria Geelong, as it is now known, used to be known as Football Geelong, Mike McKINSTRY, right here at Myers Reserve. Lots happening this year in football, in local football. The community leagues are kicking off this weekend. On top of that, we've got the Victorian Junior Country Championships that are going to be held both here at Myers Reserve and also at Stead Park, home of Geelong Soccer Club. It's an election year, which means lots of politicians will be out there looking for votes, and this is how we need to play this game very, very smartly so that our sport, world football, the world game, can get the funding it deserves and needs to improve facilities right across the region. And of course, the inevitable topic of discussion, the regional facility. All of those topics we'll be covering with Mike a little bit later on in this program. But stay tuned. We've got a couple of short messages from our sponsors, and a big, big thank you to all of our sponsors, because without our sponsors, these shows would not be able to go ahead. After this short break, we'll be catching up with the chair of Football Victoria Geelong, Mike McKINSTRY. Stay tuned for that, folks. Oz Sports Line Marking is the Geelong Region's premier sports line marking service, servicing Greater Geelong, the Bellarine, Surf Coast and the Golden Plains Shire. Why choose Oz Sports Line Marking to mark out your sporting pitch? Well, we offer the following: professional, accurate sporting pitch line marking to competition standards, reliable service and clear communication, high quality paint and commercial grade equipment. We have experience working with many clubs, schools and councils in the region, and we are a local Geelong-based service. Book now and prepare your sporting field professionally and cost-effectively ahead of the coming 2026 winter season. For more information, contact Steve from Oz Sports Line Marking Geelong on 04 08 395 395 or email us at ozsportslinemarking@gmail.com. Welcome back to the Geelong Region Soccer Show podcast. Our first guest for tonight's show is someone who's been a regular on the show in past seasons, and it's always a pleasure to have him back. It's the chair. He's the chair of the Geelong Football Association, or Football Geelong, these days called Football Victoria Geelong, and we'll find out a little bit more about that name change and other things that have happened in the off-season and looking ahead to season 2026. It's my absolute pleasure to welcome Mike McKINSTRY to the Geelong Region Soccer Show. Mike, how are you?
Good, mate. Thanks, Tonchi. How are you?
Geez, it just seems like it was yesterday when we were catching up last year, how quickly time flies. But these days, there is just no off-season. It's so busy, isn't it?
No, it is. I mean, and we'll probably talk a little bit about that, some of the comps that are now basically totally around the season, which is great, you know, because we're really beginning to raise the profile of the game, and we'll talk about that a little bit, sure. But yeah, it's really good. It's busy.
Now, you did tell me that you went into retirement last year or the year before, but you seem to be a lot
well,
more
the team are doing all the hard work, particularly guys like Tyler. Big shout out to Tyler for doing all the hard work, particularly with the rep squads. But
we'll talk about that because we did talk to Tyler way back in episode 1.
Yeah,
can't believe that we're up to episode 5, I think, or 6 of this year. But the name change, that's pretty significant.
Yep.
Known as Football Geelong, but as of now, it's Football Victoria Geelong. And one of the reasons for that is uniformity, I believe.
Yeah, look, what I mean, a lot of the audience from Geelong will realise that football in the Geelong region has been part of Football Victoria for nearly 16 years, whereas a lot of the other regions were standalone associations, as everybody will know. And during last year and the year before, there was what was called a regional review done, And all the various regions were asked, and all the clubs in those regions were asked, what do they want to do going forward? Do they want to continue with a regional association, or do they want to do, for example, what Geelong did and fold in with Football Victoria? And unanimously they voted to fold in, if you like, with Football Victoria. So that then meant that you had all these different named areas, and then the discussion with Football Victoria as well, do we make it all consistent? We're all under the Football Victoria banner, and then we got Football Victoria Ballarat, Football Victoria Bendigo, Football Victoria Geelong. We'd already stepped ahead of that, to be honest. We'd sort of jumped ahead and actually created Football Geelong. And to be honest, we did that because when we joined Football Victoria a while ago, I mean, for me, when I took over as the chair 5 years ago, we didn't really have, a proper branding. It was all, still FFV was everywhere. You looked, and FFA.
Well, I remember it was called Geelong Region Football Association, then Geelong Region Soccer Association, then Geelong Soccer, Geelong Football. We didn't have no brand. We
didn't have an identity, and to be honest, it was guys like myself and Rob Palmachori and Monica, for example, has done a great job with the website. And we basically said, look, we've got to do, and Simon Wrench at the time, and we said, look, Geelong lacks the identity that it needs, bearing in mind the size of it. So we jumped ahead, if you like, and we created Football Geelong because there wasn't anything. And since then, we created our own branding, we created our own Facebook, we created our own Instagram, which is now significant following, and we created our own website. And that really gained a lot of momentum. And we had feedback from a lot of people in the local community, including politicians, saying, we now know better who you are. So we've now got that. And I think there's not a big change to say it's now Football Victoria Geelong. It just means that we're still Geelong, nothing's changed. We just sit under the umbrella of Football Victoria, and we frankly keep doing what we're doing, and engaging with all the local politicians, all the stakeholders, and bringing Football Victoria alongside us. So yeah, no real big change from our point of view. Big change for the other regions, but not so for Geelong.
But in the greater scheme of things, I guess, and we'll jump to another point that I was going to make a little bit later on. I guess that coordination, the fact that we're kind of a lot more perceived to be together, which is very important when we're dealing with the politicians, because one of the things that Football Victoria over the off-season has started is the Level the Game petition, so to speak. And I guess this is something we've always been saying all along. We need to present more of a unified front going forward to a lot of the politicians. I guess this is one rather significant change that is heading in that right direction.
Yeah, absolutely huge. And there's been two meetings recently that Rob Palmachori and I attended on behalf of Geelong in Spring Street at State Parliament, and it's been significantly supported. There was probably nearly 250 people there. The politicians were there from both sides of government in terms of Labour and Liberal. We also had the Minister for Sport there, and Dan Birrell, the CEO at Football Victoria, was there, as well as the chairman and lots of other people from, I wouldn't mention them all, within Football Victoria. And it was really trying to, I guess, push the game and demonstrate to the community that, we all love the AFL, and I love AFL. I'm a Cats supporter. But we're now beginning to see more and more in Melbourne that the soccer community, the football community is growing. And we need more awareness of how much it's growing, because that will plays into support for the game, investment facilities, all the things that your audience know very well, we all know very well. But to have that now put in place, and then a follow-up initiative that, again, we went up to Spring Street to the meeting, this Level the Playing Field. And the choice of that word is not, they didn't just pluck it out of the air. They are sort of pushing it a bit by calling it Level the Playing Field, because they want more level investment in sports like soccer in comparison to others. So that wording was very deliberately chosen by Football Victoria, and that's why they're pushing politicians now to realise the importance of this game that we all know and love.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that a bit later on, because it is obviously a state election year, so it's very, very important there. But speaking of the year ahead, there's a lot happening. That is such an understatement. But one of the big things is the return of the Victorian Junior Country Championships to Geelong.
Yes.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you might remember, some of the audience might remember, we last hosted in 2022. In fact, here was one of the reasons, the Myers Reserve, which been here in Stead Park. And that's returning again this year, only a short 4 years later, to the same two venues. So again, here and then at Stead Park. And yeah, we're delighted to host it. It's now run by Football Victoria. It used to be run by the Country Leagues Football Association. So now that's all the associations have folded into Football Victoria Football Victoria running it. They ran it last year in Albury-Wodonga for the first time.
And how did you find that? Because we did have you on the program talking about that, and the wonderful facilities there. But that's another story. But how did you find the actual running of the tournament?
Well, it was great from our point of view because it meant that Football Victoria, and this is one of the benefits I think the associations will find by becoming part of Football Victoria. A lot of the operational support is then done by some expert people in Football Victoria who do a good job. Competitions, for example, are doing a great job, and we're also now leaning in a lot more to coaching, which you might talk about later. So from our point of view, and I think the associations will see it, allows them to focus in on the game, the development of the game in their local region, and then working collaboratively with Football Victoria, who can then, run the comps. They can turn up with the kids, put the time into the kids, and let Football Victoria manage the logistics and lots of others beyond that. So we found it very beneficial. So it'll be a bit different this year here in Geelong, because last time we were heavily involved as Geelong planning and organising. We can now in some ways take a backward step and allow Football Victoria to continue to develop that country champs.
Now, we're going to take one step forward, then one step back. We'll talk about last year before we move on to the rest of this year. But last year was a huge year, numbers-wise. Do we have data as to exactly how much it was? Because I think from all accounts, it seemed to me it was a record-breaking year.
It was, It was just under 6,500 players. And that was up on a 20% increase the year before, so which was enormous. And I thought, well, in 2024, we had a big increase. So I thought it was going to plateau. It didn't. It increased another 5%. And it looks as though from the early signs, obviously it's very early days at the moment to have registrations finalised, but it looks as though in 2026 it's going to be even stronger. And we're seeing some peaks in certain age groups, which is interesting.
Is it?
Under 13s, there's a big drive in under 13s that we're seeing coming through, which is fantastic because we want the younger kids coming through. We want to have that pipeline which you hope we can all hang on to, and there's lots of challenges that a lot of people out there know about.
Now let's talk about that under 13s, because as it went, days when I used to be a junior coach, that was such an interesting age group, a very exciting age group, because that's really basically when they start to play competitively, for ladders and points. And, you try and tell a kid, no, we're not playing for ladders. They just want to. But also, it also integrates a lot of the mini roos into the program, so they kind of graduate the under 11s. And I know initially there was always skepticism, is that a good jump? But time has shown that it is a very good jump because there's multiple divisions and they can now enter. And that seems to be the real launching pad for a lot of the success. Am I reading that right?
Yeah, no, I think you are. I mean, there's obviously there's that and more, but there's as all of these things that are quite complex. There's not one particular thing. There's a number of various things, but it goes back, I think, to probably in 2023 and 2024 when we started to look at the competition in total, from mini roos all the way up. We looked at the age groups, and we changed the age groups before, because what we were finding was the age groups almost changed every year dependent on demand. And we're saying, look, we're just not getting the consistency of the players playing through. And then there was a lot of discussion about, there's a big jump from playing from, say, under 11s to under 13s. And then we said, well, we could create under 13A and under 13B. So it effectively creates, if you like, an under 12s almost. But it allows the kids that have just graduated up to that level to play at that next level, get comfortable with under 13s. And then guess what? A bit like at school, the next year, they're the under 13As. They've had another year's experience under their belt. So those things have really taken hold now. And we're beginning to see the benefits of that coming through as kids get older. And we all know this. And when you get to your later teenage years, other things become very important in your life. You got to do your school exams. You've got other things in your mind. Let's be honest, boyfriends and girlfriends enter the equation.
That's a big one, yeah.
A lot of people want to go and play in Metropolitan. That's fine too. That's the whole pathway that we want. So you start to see in some age groups there's some pressure points. But the bottom line is, if we continue to feed it on the 13 level and below, then that pressure point is something we can start to manage.
Hi, I'm Joe Gergich.
And I'm Helena Fentella.
And welcome to our family here at Harcourts.
I guess also if you've got bigger pool of players there's going to be a lot to accommodate the elite players, but there'll also be a lot to accommodate the social community level and the ones that have never played before as well. So that's an important thing. Now, we talk about big numbers, but this year we've seen just the recently concluded Women's Asian Cup and the soon to occur Men's World Cup. Are we expecting another huge increase, huge spike in increase for the sport?
I think there has been. I think there will be a big spike in numbers. I mean, I think in the last few years the Matildas have really led the way with the girls' game, and in some ways they've closed the gap with the Socceroos. So which is a great problem to have, and we're seeing that here in Geelong. I mean, we've still got roughly it's about 2/3 boys, 1/3 girls, roughly, but that gap's closing, and we agreed to set some targets that we try and get to 50-50. And we might talk a little bit about the rep squads. When we look at the rep squads this year, we've got 200 kids, and guess what? It's 100 boys and 100 girls. It's 50-50.
There you go. Yep.
So we're continuing to push, and it's exciting. It really is. I mean, a success on the field just breeds that enthusiasm for kids to get involved, and for parents as well, because there are some parents that probably haven't got a football or soccer background, and when they can see the possibilities of what can happen at international level, and all of a sudden they go, actually, this isn't crazy that my kid could actually make it through. Look at Kira Cooney Cross, and you running out there, from Torquay. Everybody goes, whoa, hang on. Some of their local kids have got the capability to get there, So, I hope it just keeps going.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. And if you haven't had a chance to catch up with episode number 1, go on YouTube, go on our YouTube channel, listen to the interview with Tyler Stavenuta, who's the coordinator of the rep squads, and he does mention a record number of players registered this year. But he also mentioned how it's now become almost like just the rep squad is not just for the country championships, but they're going to be three different tournaments as well. But it just brings me to my next point about the sport of soccer, sport of football being a year-round event, and I guess Football Victoria Geelong now. You guys are not just responsible for 6 months of the year or looking after the sport. It's 12 monts of the year.
Absolutely.
And there's so many programs and tournaments outside of the traditional April to September window.
Well, a few years ago, and I may have talked about this before, that we looked at, for example, the playing hours of kids who play football, say in Europe, versus the playing hours that they play in Australia. Guess what? Europe was far higher. And part of the reason was that we had a short season, and then there was a big gap, and then we rocked up the next season, and particularly for the younger kids, you were almost re-educating them how to play again. And then by the time they got moving, they got back up, a bit like golf, they got back up to a decent level because they'd got a few rounds under their belt. Well, now we're finding that, if we really want to close the gap in terms of our kids becoming really quality players, they've got to get more playing time. So what we said was, when the season ends, we've got to try and work out what are we going to do over the summer so we don't have those big gaps. And that's when we expanded the representative squads in particular. So we've now got the Western United Cup that's coming up in April. It's actually been hosted here at Rangers, at Myers Reserve. But then we've got the Country Champs, which is the traditional one, which is June, the long weekend, the King's long weekend. And again, as I said earlier, hosted here in at Stead Park. And then later in the year, we've got a third competition down at Mount Eliza. So, and look, we're just seeing it grow and grow. And
And it's like when you look at the football landscape here in Geelong, I guess you see a lot of those kids then end up going to either Geelong or North Geelong if they're boys in the NPL, or to Geelong Galaxy if it's the NPLW or girls. But then you also see a lot of the players that filter through back to the clubs that have had a stint in the NPL. So the region benefits as a whole, and it really is great to see. But I guess with that, does that mean that there's been a lot more volunteers required, a lot more club officials required, a lot more coaches? Is the sport becoming an industry where it's actually requiring more and more personnel off the field?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think everybody knows it has been for years. I mean, and thank you to all the volunteers out there, because I know there's lots of people watch your show and they've put in year after year after year. And frankly, the game wouldn't be where it is today if it wasn't for the support of many people out there. So a big thank you. But yeah, it will continue to have. That's the thing, as you know, it's a bit like growth. It's a bit like growth in, say, the Victorian population in Melbourne. It creates pressure points, and often growth happens, and then you're trying to run behind it to put in place the things that ideal world is you get it in place before we grow.
Yeah.
But look, I guess in some ways that's that's the success of the game. In some ways, is that it just keeps growing. We're trying to plan ahead and anticipate what that growth will be, and that's why we've stepped up a lot of the communication that we have now with government, in particular, to try and get them onto the front foot rather than trying to catch up, which is traditionally where a lot of infrastructure projects have been. And that's no criticism of anybody. It's just trying to catch up with the investment requirement for the future of the game. And there are lots of people standing there with a hand up looking for money. Frankly, we're just trying to get a bigger hand now and a bigger voice.
But at the moment, we've got this massive organic growth, but the facilities, as we know in Geelong, probably are not at that level. And although, particularly up here in the north, some of the facilities have improved dramatically over the last 10 years, and some of the funding that the clubs get has been fantastic, but we don't have a regional facility. We don't have a sub-regional facility. And I know that's in the pipeline. Mate, how do we make it come happen?
Well, look, the good news is it is beginning to happen. It might feel like it's a slow pace, and particularly if you've been around football for a while. When I've been on your show a number of years now, and I'm sure some of the audience go, this guy comes on every time and says the same thing. Well, guess what? I'm going to continue to say the same thing. It's called consistency. Because one of the problems we had in the past is football, we flip-flopped all over the place. And it made it easy if you were, and I'm not saying this happens, but you say, well, one voice says this, one voice says that. So if you're talking to politicians, you're talking to council, you need to have a consistent plan, which is why we took time to write up a strategy. We published the strategy, we got it adopted by all the councils, and then we're following up, with all the various groups to start to make investment happen. And we've had some great support, hats off to the team in the council. They're doing a great job. Now, they've got a lot of demands out there, but we've had some very good support, and I'll maybe talk about that a little bit later, because you were going to talk about the regional facility, and I can mention a bit more about that
Well, let's talk about that. Affordable plus quality equals Geelong Access Hire. At Geelong Access Hire, we have an extensive range of machines available. Our experienced team is ready to guide you through the selection process. Whether you need a boom lift for high-reach tasks, a scissor lift for narrow spaces, or a forklift for heavy lifting, we will assess your project requirements and recommend the most suitable machine. Our personalised service ensures you get the right equipment for maximum efficiency and safety on the job site. And with our commitment to competitive pricing, it means that you will always get top quality machines without breaking the bank. From short-term rentals for immediate tasks to long-term solutions for ongoing projects, we've got you covered. For a free quote or for more information, contact us on 03 4241 2463 or visit our website at geelongaccesshire.com.au. Geelong Access Hire is proudly locally owned and operated and a huge supporter of the local football community here in Geelong.
Mention a bit more about that.
Well, let's talk about that, because as we said, it's very relevant, and this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep that conversation relevant, always bringing it up at the top of the agenda, because we have to. The moment we sort of take our foot off the pedal, there are other sports. I know, my daughter's involved in basketball, and that's another sport at the moment crying out for facilities. So many other sports. And then there's always that big one, the AFL. They're always looking for their piece of the pie, and they will continue to do so. But we have to keep these conversation relevant. And the regional facility is something that is absolutely number one priority, isn't it?
Oh, look, it is. I mean, I know that, and again, a lot of people have said we've been crying out for it for years. You mentioned last year at the Country Champs, when I took a video personally of the Wodonga facility and put that out there so people can see, well, and this is one of the discussions we've had. We met, for example, with Richard Miles. He was in the meeting. We met, Dan Birrell was there, the mayor was there. Great creative support from Eddie Contell, Anthony Aitken, Ella George. We really have had fantastic support. And one of the things that we recognised was that, look, if people like Albury Wodonga have got one, if Ballarat's got one, if Bendigo's got one, if Shepparton's got one, there's one going on at the moment in Gippsland, way bigger than all those regions. what are we missing here in Geelong? And we finally got a bit of a breakthrough. So at the moment, there's a plan being worked on, which we're going to be proposing goes to as a state election campaign issue. We've had fantastic support from, for example, Ella George, who's the MP you'd know well from your area up here. And she's been so good. Eddie and Anthony Aitken have been fantastic behind that too. And we're now working local. This is, again, one of the benefits of being under the umbrella of Football Victoria. They've got a lot of expertise in this area in terms of putting in facilities, in terms of getting the engineers, getting the architects, getting the design work done, working up a budget, and then saying, we now, to place a facility here in Geelong, we now need X million, and also here's our 2 or 3 preferred locations. And it's a very professional process you got to go through. You know, everybody out there knows you can't just say to government, we just need facilities, and we'll put my hand up. And then they go, what facilities do you want? Where do you want them? How much of the investment? Where's the business case? Where's the engineering? So that's what I mean about consistency and about being professional. We're now, that business case for that regional facility is now coming together. And very soon that's going to be put forward as a request into that election campaign that I just mentioned. And then look, at the end of the day, there's still going to be, I'm sure, lots of other requests in that election campaign too. So just the fact that we've done it doesn't mean to say it's going to happen. But the fact we've done it says we have a concrete plan that people can see and touch and feel. And then we're one step closer, and then we just got to keep, trying to get it across the line. Yeah,
and as they say, the old saying, "Build it, and they will come." It will have some significant flow-on effects for the sport, for all the other clubs. Not necessarily the clubs that will use it directly or indirectly, but just the sport in general. And I think that's really important. Now, speaking of the clubs, I've spoken to quite a few clubs already this year, and a lot of them are turning juniors away, for example. They're at capacity, and for whatever reason, whether it's facilities, whether it's coaches, whether it's volunteers, whatever the case may be, a lot of these clubs seem to be at capacity. Is that the general kind of impression you're getting from clubs? Are clubs at bursting point, or is there still room for growth in the current situation?
There's still some room, I think. And one of the things that we've got better at is a Geelong community, if you like, within the football community. And it's simple stuff, whereby we've networked some key people, for example, on WhatsApp. And what we've said that if anybody is short of a player in a particular age group, let's post it to everybody, all the clubs together on WhatsApp, because it's quick. You get an answer. You don't send off an email. And people are saying, I'm looking for an under-15 player. Or alternatively, they say, we've actually got some under-15 players that we can't place. Does anybody want them? So rather than just turn them away, which is traditionally what would happen, because the clubs can't force them to join another club, we're now actually making sure that all the clubs know who's got excess players and who's got shortages of players. So we're starting to see we can help direct the families and those players towards those clubs that do have vacancies, because there are still some that have vacancies. But fundamentally, it still comes back to the pressure point that there'll be pressure there. There's no doubt about it in certain age groups. And that's why we've got to make sure that in the facility investment, that we don't just go for the big shiny regional facility. We also go for support, here at clubs like this. And it's not only, we've got to get lighting right, we got to get the grounds right, because we all know drainage and stuff like that. Particularly by the end of the winter, some of the fields are just so tired and muddy, as you know. That's actually getting better. If you look at how it used to be, you'd remember. I remember. Oh, gosh. I used to play down at Ocean Grove, and you were up to your knees in mud almost.
I didn't mind it actually, Mike, because it sort of slowed the game to my pace when we played Sunday League. I remember the old Jarvis Oval, Deakin University. It was the worst quagmire you've ever seen. But I'd always score a goal, and I was not a prolific goal scorer.
But all of that said, it's not about, I remember back in the days, I sound like an oldie because I am, but frankly, that's in the past, and we've got to raise the bar and say, we're not going to go back there. We've got to keep pushing for things improving. And whilst I'd love it to be snap fingers and it's all done tomorrow, we're definitely on the case, and we're there supporting the clubs and pushing a lot of the key players in the
it's
local
great
community.
To see. I mean, exciting times, whichever way we see it, and just the natural, I guess, trend will be that the numbers will grow. Clubs will grow, etc., etc. But this is a personal interest of mine. I guess when I look at FC Leopold and Armstrong Creek, clubs that I were either directly or indirectly involved in setting up back in my day, it's almost been 10 years, in fact, since those clubs were set up. Does a region? I mean, it's grown so much. Do we need more clubs? Has there been more interest from prospective new clubs? And if you kind of looked at the map of Geelong, where do you think that we could fit more
Well,
clubs.
to be honest, not much, not
Mhm.
much. But that's not to say that we should continue to review that. Probably it's timely to actually review that because we all know the growth corridors. You mentioned Armstrong Creek.
Mm.
I mean, so significant growth down there. And that's why there is the plan that you referred to earlier, I think, about having a sub-regional facility investment
Yep.
down there. So that's already sort of work in progress. It's not in place yet in terms of the building and everything and the fields, but it's coming. The regional facility is probably going to be somewhere here in the north. And if we want it for major events like the Country Champs and others, it's got to be close to the freeway because we want to use it for major events as well. And that way it's got to have access to Melbourne.
Yeah.
So there's no doubt about it. A regional facility will probably be more likely to be in the north than anywhere else because of that connectivity with Melbourne. But yeah, we just got to keep pushing for the investment. There may be the need to start to look at, well, as the volumes and the population growth continues to happen, do we need to look at whether we need new clubs springing up? There's not big numbers at the moment putting the hand up, but we should look at that as.
And generally, that'll usually happen organically, won't it? Someone will turn around and say, there's no club around my area. I'm really interested in setting something up. How do I go about it? And if that happens, that is the case.
Yeah, look, and just to remind the local community, and a lot of people know this, but their actual biggest club in terms of participation is down at Torquay. Surf Coast. That's the biggest club in the region by quite a way. And hats off to Brett and the whole group down there that have done a great job down there. They're also campaigning, different council of course, but they're campaigning for facility investment as well because they know their artificial surface is now 10, nearly 12 years old, and technology has moved on a hell of a lot. So they're now looking to say, look, it's now beginning to show real signs of where it starts to become dangerous and real hard to run on. So and the council are now open to start to have that conversation. That then gets you all-weather pitches, so you can start to train and make it available for training. And we're trying to make sure that that's a factor that we've put in as a request, if you like, into the regional facility, that we've got that type of artificial surface as well. And that makes it available to clubs so that if somebody's struggling for training, we don't just use it for big, bright, shiny events. We use it for real practical stuff as well.
Absolutely. Now, we had that interview with Brett King prior to Easter where he actually mentioned at the time that they were close to hitting 1,000 players, 1,000 registered players, and dare I say now after Easter that they've probably hit that number. But exciting time for the sport, no doubt in 2026 and beyond. But mate, where do you see the sport over the next 12 to 24 months? Will we hit that magic 7,000 registered player figure next year?
I think we'll be close. Yeah, I think we might. Wow. And I think we'll continue to expand. I'd love to see the regional facility obviously get over the line in terms of the election, and then it's moving on from there. We'll wait and see. You can never take anything for granted. And that's why I want to make sure that we also keep focus on grassroots football as well. And things like all abilities that we haven't mentioned. So you said earlier before we started that you wanted to just bring that into the conversation. I think it's important that we do that because if you've been around football a long time, you sort of gravitate towards, well, you get grassroots, you get community, then you start to move into up into Melbourne and also that league and get much more competitive. But we've also got gaps at the moment, which, for example, is how do we provide people with a disability the opportunity to play football as well, young kids. Last year we got some funding that between Football Victoria and here in Football Geelong, we actually put in a grant request, which we got 50,000. We put some investment towards that. And we got 5 or 6 clubs that started the process of saying, well, let's dip our toe in the water. We won't go for a full league yet, but we'll get it started. And 10 out of 10 of the clubs that have started that process. So watch out for that growing. Yeah. Last year was a little bit of an experiment. We had it going back before pre-COVID, but it died off after COVID. So we're now resurrecting that. And we're now seeing a lot more interest in trying to make our game more inclusive.
Yeah, it's fantastic, and it's great to hear about those things because it is. We talk about inclusivity, but we really want to. It's the one sport, in my opinion, that anyone can play. Young, old, male, female, fit, unfit, able-bodied, all abilities body. It's the one sport that everyone can play. Wheelchair football, I mean, that's another one.
Yeah, we haven't got wheelchair football going just yet, but we've got our eye on it.
Yeah.
I've looked at some of the wheelchair football that goes up.
I think maybe we might need to resuscitate walking football, because I think those I'm in that kind of category. But yeah, like really exciting times, that's for sure. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here on the Geelong Region Soccer Show. It's an absolute pleasure. We'll definitely have to get you back on the show later on in the year, maybe even after the Victorian Country Championships, just for a bit of a wash up to see how that all went. But yeah, you've certainly got your hands full, and we appreciate everything you do.
Look, and just to finish for me is just to remind everybody, at the end of the day, football in Geelong is run by all the clubs, and I know as ourselves in Football Victoria trying to coordinate it. So it's not all about us. The clubs do all the heavy lifting. We mentioned earlier, guys like Tyler and others have done a lot of heavy lifting, getting the rep squads up and running. We've done a lot more work on coaching. We've done 2 mini roos coaching, which mini roos coaching has been neglected. Let's be honest. A lot of people who have been parents put their hand up and said, I'll coach the kids, but I don't know soccer. And we haven't done anything about it in the past. So we've now ran some coaching for those coaches so that they now know how to play the game a bit better themselves and coach the kids. And we've had the thing called Coach Her initiative, which has been run by Football Victoria, putting a lot more focus in the female game. And the recent announcements in FIFA, we appointed Sharon Gibbons from Barwon Soccer Club as a person who joined our committee with a specific focus on female football. And the idea is that is on the agenda every time. And for our meeting, which is coming up for us next Monday, won't be next Monday for when this goes to air, and that we're going to talk about that. How do we get more female coaches in the dugout alongside the players, and other things like that we changed when we changed the mini roos because they'd grown too big. They're just struggling to manage them on a Sunday morning, so we've changed that back to a home and away set up, and the girls are now playing on a Saturday, which was a big change. But it's also then says the girls now turned up, the younger girls, on a Saturday when all the other age groups and the older girls are playing as well. So they can now see the aspiration to the kids above them and the pathway. So there's a lot of stuff going on.
A lot of stuff going on, understatement. On that note, we're going to take a short break, and we're going to continue with tonight's episode of the Geelong Region Soccer Show podcast.
The world is yours. So work hard, and you can have whatever it is you want.
I hope you enjoyed that interview, rather extensive interview with Mike McKINSTRY. On next week's program, we've got a fella called John Hammond, who is a Geelong-based lover of football. He's originally from England, now based in Geelong. He's also the sponsorship and marketing director of an organisation called Happy Football Cambodia Australia. He was involved in a very interesting program last year that involved travelling to Cambodia and organising a football tournament at the Cambodian National Football Stadium. We'll also be speaking with 3 people from North Geelong Warriors Football Club. Rob Pehard, who's the secretary, his daughter Maya, who's a player with the senior women's team at North Geelong Warriors, and also North Geelong Warriors under-23 player Jesse Knezovich. All 3 of those are involved with the All Abilities program at North Geelong Warriors, which is finishing up next week. And they'll be telling us all about the program that they're running at Alco Park for people with all abilities. Until next week, next Monday night at 8 p.m, goodbye.